Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is a newly crowned IFBB Women's Physique Pro. Today's guest is Candace Walton. Candace, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure, Candace. So we're going to get into bodybuilding talk. We're going to recap kind of nationals here in a little bit. But the first question I'd like to know, Candace, is who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
I will have to say back when I kind of started, Branch Warren was really big. Dennis Wolf, always was a big fan of his. Steve Kuklo, the Texas guys, since I'm from Texas, so you got to rep the Texas guys. And then, Dana had kind of gotten into everything, back when I kind of started too. So I was always a big fan of hers. Just as I kind of got into it. Danny Reardon actually was really upset, really kind of sad when she stopped competing. I was a big fan of hers as well. So
yeah, cool. Okay, now you brought up Danny Reardon, and I've got to say this because I don't. Do you still follow her on social media or not?
I haven't in a while. I don't think actually. I haven't seen kind of what she's doing as of late.
Okay, so before I moved back to Iowa, I was out in Colorado, and I was following Danny from just when she was like the little Monstar was her nickname,
Yeah.
right? So I had her on Instagram and just all these other fitness people, bodybuilders, stuff like that. Well, I was living out in Colorado, and then I saw that she made a post because she used to be in Florida, that she was living out like in the Boulder, Colorado area, which is I was like at the time I think in Colorado Springs or Denver. So long story short, she stepped away from bodybuilding. I had another podcast before this one. It was more kind of like fitness oriented, but we met up in Boulder, and I actually had her on that podcast, and she got into kind of like talking about why she got out of competing, because she was second place at the Olympia at one point.
Right.
And we got into some really deep talk, but I think she's kind of like a life coach. She has her own podcast now. But since you brought her up, I just had to say that I've met her before. I had her on another podcast, and she's a super, super cool girl. So anyways, there's a little Danny Reardon story for you. All right.
She's really nice. I actually had the opportunity to meet her one New Year's. She was just randomly in Fort Worth, and I ran into her at Billy Bob's in the stockyard. So
Cool.
that was kind of cool. So
yeah, awesome. All right, I had to share that story really quick. But okay, so what? Let us know, Candace, at what age you started lifting weights, and then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
like actively lifting for bodybuilding, I was about, it was probably around 11 or 12 years ago. So I was probably around 22 when I started doing it, 21, 22. And I was really big into obstacle course racing before I started bodybuilding. Just ironically, it's kind of really different. And I ran into, and the story is just weird because I ran into a martial arts coach, and the martial arts coach also had his own, he had like a gym, and he mostly did martial arts, but it was also a personal training gym. And he met me because he was training a friend of mine, and he was like, man, like, have you ever thought about bodybuilding? You're just very proportionate. I really feel like you have the build for it. And I was like, you know what? I don't really think I've ever considered that. Like I was always very into fitness, and I loved working out and everything like that. And so I kind of started dabbling in it with him, and he actually started training me initially, and just really liked it and kind of built on it from there. So it's just a very funny story that like like a martial arts coach is kind of who got me into bodybuilding. But super nice guy, and I'm happy that he did. So
For sure. And we're gonna get more into that now. I guess I want to ask you, like, did you do any type of weight training like when you were in high school for sports or anything, or was it not till you were 22 that you really started lifting?
I did. I mean, we did like the weight room because I played basketball and everything. So we did the whole weight room thing in high school. And I really wanted to play sports in college, but I had a bad experience with a coach in high school, and so I just kind of took a step back from it. Really kind of regret that, to be honest. But I think everything kind of happens for a reason, and because I didn't pursue sports, I did start doing more fitness related things, did the obstacle course racing, which eventually led me to bodybuilding, which eventually led me to where I am now. So, it all comes full circle eventually.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit, Candace, more about your upbringing? So you mentioned basketball, mentioned sports, but just let us know like where you grew up, siblings, parents, like how did they influence you? Talk about the other sports that you played. What were you like when you were a younger girl? And just kind of walk us up to about high school and then stop at high school because I've got some other questions to kind of transition us from there. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was really, really big into basketball. Basketball was probably my number one. I also played volleyball, I played soccer. I did cross country. Cross country, I loved running. I just wasn't very fast. I was never fast. So which is where the cross country comes into play. So I preferred long distance running, not anything that involved me having to sprint or anything like that. Dabbled in track, shot put and everything, of course, not the running because that would be fast running. But dabbled in the shot put, and I grew up in East Texas, which was kind of more country. And then my dad has actually been a Baptist pastor since I was 2 years old. So we moved to Mansfield, which is more city. So we moved to the city for him to um, be a missionary and kind of grow on that aspect of things. And I've just, I always, in sports, for whatever reason, I was always just very, very hard on myself. I was very internally competitive. So, and I'm kind of like that just in general, with the sense of I'm much more, you know, hold myself to a high expectation. I'm much harder on myself than anyone else can ever be. So, anytime anyone ever had criticism for me, it's like I had already gone through that whole cycle personally, internally myself before I needed anyone else to come and give it to me. So, um, my, uh, you know, my parents, I look up to my dad a lot. Um, I just think that we're similar. We have similar personalities. Um, but my whole entire family is not very fitness oriented. They're actually um not very healthy, um, mostly obese. Like, and I don't just mean my immediate family, I mean like my entire family, right? Got health problems and things like that. And I didn't want to be that way. And with just as hard as I am on myself, I really wanted to be something. And anytime I just want to take it and run with it and achieve it. And that comes with that competitive nature, I think. So, um, really, whenever I was all about basketball growing up. Like, I was playing tournaments every weekend. I was playing select ball. Like, I was practicing multiple times a day. I was all about it. That's all I did. And so whenever I stopped doing that, I really kind of lost myself in college for a little bit because I was like, what do I do with myself? Like, what do you do whenever you don't do what you've always done anymore? It just didn't make any sense. And I didn't really know where I was supposed to be and all that stuff. So I went through that kind of little portion of, you know, what do I do now? And so when I found the obstacle course racing, that kind of led me into being able to train for something. And then when I found bodybuilding, I was like, okay, like you can actually, now I can be an athlete again. I can take this somewhere. I can actually do something with this. And I went to the Olympia a couple times in Vegas, and I was just like, this is where I want to be. I want to end up here. And I've been just chasing that ever since.
Yeah.
So
Okay, now I want to take a step back. Now I've got to ask you, since you said that your dad, is a pastor or was a pastor. I'm assuming that you grew up in a quite conservative, like Christian home. Is that fair to say?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
so talk a little bit more about that because you know, a lot of times, and I'm speaking from personal experience, just so you know, okay? Not my dad wasn't a pastor, my grandpa was a pastor, but grew up going to church and youth group and all that stuff, right? And then I went off to college and started partying, you know, all this different stuff. So, but anyways, I just want you to paint that picture and talk about that a little bit more, because I'm sure that conservative, like Christian foundation that you grew up in, it's played a major role in your life, whether you still walk in that direction now or not. I'm sure it had some sort of impact on you as a younger person and now as a grown woman. So touch on that a little bit more.
Absolutely. So he was part of the Baptist Missionary Association, and for anyone that doesn't know what that means, that's Southern Baptist. Southern Baptists, you know, are very just old school. So, you know, drinking, tattoos, Halloween, cursing, rated R movies, um, anything like sexual, from dancing to, you know, maybe like intense public displays of affection and things like that. Like those are very frowned upon, right? Like they don't condone those types of things. Um, to your point, like it's just very like a conservative style. Um, you know, cursing in front of my dad was just like the worst thing you could do. Um, my dad threw CDs out the window when he heard like a curse word, like back when there was CDs, right? But my brother, you know, if he heard anything, like he'd like throw it out the window, and there goes that, you know, $20 or whatever CDs cost back then. But he, and that was kind of, you know, and it's kind of fun actually to think back about it, because I watched my dad grow and I watched my dad transition through this whole process, because he got ordained when I was 2 years old, and we were just around a lot of older Baptists, and it was very much so like, don't embarrass your dad, like do not embarrass your dad. Um, and that was how we grew up, was you're going to be on your best behavior. If my dad looked at us and we had done something wrong, we were like, oh crap, right? Like this is going to be bad later. Because it was just growing up, it was just always like, don't embarrass your dad. And so as he kind of transitioned through that whole process and just kind of grew himself, really honestly, he loosened up, and eventually he kind of pulled a little bit away from the BMA, still, you know, still in the Baptist side of things, but kind of pulled a little bit away from just being on the missionary side of things and being very like deep within it. But it's just fun to see him just loosen up in the growth that he had throughout it, because, you know, you can still be a Christian and not be so intense, right? Like, you know, I can sit down and watch a rated R movie with my dad now, and it's fine, right? Like we can um go trick-or-treating with my son, and it's not the worst thing in the world, right? My dad got a tattoo. Me and my brother are covered in tattoos, probably because we were always told not to. But and you know, my dad will sit and he'll have a drink with you, like he'll have a margarita at dinner with you and things like that. So he's not, you know, just so intense about it now as an adult like he was when we were younger. But you know, he grew through all of that, and I think he was able to just kind of loosen up a little bit to understand that it's okay to
Sure.
do some of those things. So
Now, did that? I guess, you know, obviously you said that your dad, you've kind of seen him grow over the years and stuff and loosen up a little bit. But did that put some kind of pressure on you when you were a younger girl, like that you had to try to meet some sort of expectation, and you knew that, you know, if you brought shame or something like that to your family name, like, you know, like you said, your dad would deal with that later. But you know, did you sense any pressure? Did that, you know, in any way affect you when you were a young girl, or not really?
I think so, definitely. And to be honest, I learned a lot from my brother of what not to do. My brother was, you know, I was always the type of person like if we were gonna get disciplined, I'd be like, I got it, right? Like my dad's like, hey, you're gonna get spanked until you cry. I'm like, tears, 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 tears. Like, you don't even have to touch me, tears. I got it, right? My brother, on the other hand, was just very stubborn. And so luckily, my brother's 3 years older than me. So I got to kind of watch him and learned a lot from him. He would brag about doing something wrong and then get in trouble. And I'm like, that makes no sense. I'm not going to tell them I did something wrong and they're not going to find out, right? So luckily I had an older brother that tested the limits, and I was just able to kind of see, like, that's not smart. I'm gonna do it this way. And so I think I got through. I got away with a little bit more things because I was just smarter about it, whereas my brother, he struggled with that a little bit. But definitely the pressure was there. Like I said, just to not embarrass my father and just make sure, if you were going to do something that was frowned upon, you didn't need to do it in front of certain people, and you need to make sure that nobody was going to find out about it for sure.
Okay.
So
Okay, so talk to me before we kind of get into post high school. Talk to me a little bit more about basketball. What was it about basketball that you loved? And then you don't have to if you don't want to, but what was kind of like if you don't mind sharing, what was the bad experience with the coach that kind of deterred you from playing college basketball if you loved it so much?
yeah, so as a freshman, I got put on JV, and as a sophomore, I played on JV, and the head coach actually left my junior year, unfortunately, and we got a new coach. Um, and so I didn't play much my junior year. But I was told by the assistant coach that I was the person that made the starters better. So I literally would work my ass off in practice. And I would outshine all of the starters, right? Like I would not intentionally make them look bad, but I intentionally wanted to outperform them. I intentionally wanted to, show that I was good and show that I had what it took. And I literally was told in a meeting, in like a team meeting one day, that they acknowledged that I worked very hard, and they said sometimes there's just a person on the team who is designed to challenge the players, like the starters that are designed to challenge the people that are going to get the playing time. I'm making the starters better by challenging them in practice, right? And I just never understood that. When I was told that, I was just like, you would think if I was challenging your starters that I would be one of them, right? That I would be someone of value. And I really just kind of feel, for whatever reason, like the coach personally didn't like me. I felt that. Um I didn't understand some of her rules and some of her things that she implemented. I think that they were a little excessive. For instance, she kind of told us, hey, there's no PDA allowed, right? Public display of affection. There's with your boyfriends and stuff like that. There's none of that allowed. So I was literally walking down the hall one day holding my boyfriend's hand. I was just holding his hand. Literally all that was happening. We were walking down the hall. We were holding hands. I had to run bleachers I went to a 5A school. So huge gymnasium. I had to run holding a medicine ball above my head up and down every single staircase all the way around the bleachers 5 times. Um because I was holding my boyfriend's hand in the hallway. And I literally had like other coaches come up to me, like the volleyball coach was like, "What did you do?" Because I was just like, I didn't do anything. I was, can't hold hands. And that's what started it, right? And then it just kind of escalated from there. Um, so I just feel like for whatever reason, she just really didn't like me. It didn't matter how hard I tried. It didn't matter how much I pushed my teammates. It didn't matter how much I outshined my teammates. It didn't matter, and I even started running cross country because we had to run a mile to start the season. And if you didn't complete the mile in a certain amount of time, then you had to keep running that mile until you actually got in the time. And sometimes people got cut from the team because they couldn't make the time. So I actually ran cross country my sophomore year because I was like, I'm going to be good at this. Like, I'm going to be real good. Right. And I was like, I would take that extra initiative, and it just was never good enough for her. My senior year, there was a super talented individual. I mean, she was just she was really good. She was just not very disciplined. And she actually has since gone on to play professional basketball. She almost quit the team because of this coach, and because I just don't feel like this coach took the time to really like develop her. She was kind of all over the place, but she had the talent, right? Like, and she didn't get a lot of playing time, in any of that stuff. And so she was gonna quit. And I told her, I was like, hey, don't quit. I was like, she doesn't matter. What matters is you love basketball, and like you just keep doing what you love. And unfortunately, we have to deal with that. We have to deal with this on the side, but just keep doing what you love. Like, don't let her dictate what's going to happen, with basketball with you in the future. And my senior year, we had a ending interview, right? Like, you went and you talked with her, and like you had like an exit interview or whatever. And she was like, I found out that you did that. And she was like, that was really big of you. And I was like, well, I was really nice. I didn't want to be nice, but I wanted to really say what I wanted to say, but I didn't. I said she has a lot of potential, and sometimes people just need to know that someone has their back, and sometimes people just need to know that someone cares. And I said that to her, kind of indicating like that she didn't. Like, I don't feel like she tried to encourage me, or that she tried to make me successful. I just kind of feel like I was dismissed as this person that was going to work extremely hard in practice and really not get anything out of it. I lost all respect for her when my very last game of the season, my senior year, she chose, so they bring up, people from JV or freshmen to just have extra people on the bench for tournaments and stuff like that. So she chose to put in one of the extra people that we had brought on instead of me. So I didn't play my very last game that I ever had as a senior, because she literally looked down the bench, and I looked straight at her, and she pointed to the girl next to me to go in. And I was like, that's it, I'm done. But it was the last game and we lost. So it was like, what did it matter at that point, right? But just I'm huge on integrity, and I had no respect for her, just as a person. And so it was just kind of awful. It's awful even like reminiscing about it right now. Like, to say it, I do feel some type of way about it for sure. But it is what it is.
Right. Okay. Now, you graduate from high school, and then you said you had a little period of time where, you're done playing basketball. And I think a lot of us experience this once if we grew up, like myself, I grew up playing sports. I played a year of college football. Then I quit football after my freshman year. And looking back now, I know I literally went through an identity crisis, because like you said earlier, Candace, like when you grow up doing something your entire life, and that's like where you get all of your positive reinforcement from, and you pats on the backs and picture in the paper and all that, like it becomes your identity, especially when you're a young person, you're growing and developing, right? And then, like you said, when that's done and over with, it's like, well, who am I? Like, I'm not really into school. I don't really have anything else. Like, sports is my life. So I went through that, and I've had a lot of people on the podcast that have gone through that. So just talk a little bit about that quote unquote identity crisis, and then start walking us through how you kind of pulled yourself out of that. I think you said you got into the obstacle course racing. So just kind of start unpacking that story a little bit more in depth.
Yeah. So I went to college. I have no idea why I picked the college I went to. I think it was because it was close enough to where it was still kind of close to home, but it was far enough away to where I had to go live there. Because my brother and the way he was, my parents were a lot harder on me with curfew and things like that. And so I still had a curfew all the way up until my senior year. Um, they were just maybe because I was a female, but also because my brother just tested the limits and just really, broke a lot of leniency or trust that they had and stuff like that. And so um I wanted to leave. I was 18 the majority of my senior year because of how my birthday falls. And so I was just ready to go. I was like, I need to leave. I want to go be an adult and have independence and not be told what to do. And I want to go. And so I just went. Right. And looking back, like I kind of wish I hadn't have felt that way because I could have done things a little bit differently. But um just went and like we said, I was just doing school. And then, was like, what else do you do? I would go to the gym and work out. But then I was like, what am I working out for? Like I've always had a reason. I've always had a goal. I've always had something I was trying to achieve. And so I was like, I'm just working out to work out. Um, they always joke about the freshman 15. So I was like, well, let me make sure I don't get fat, right? Like since I'm at college eating all this crap, like lots of microwavable food and frozen stuff. And it was just like, okay, well, I need to make sure I don't get fat in the process. And so I was just very lost. You were just like, what am I doing here? Trying to focus, but you know, um, I'm the type of person, it's like I always need a goal. I need to have something that I'm working towards. And obviously it's working towards getting a degree, but personally, I just wanted something physical and personal that I was working towards, and I just didn't have that. So started I started running like the Tough Mudders and Spartan races just for fun. And then saw the elite racers and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, like you can actually make a goal of this. You can actually try to do something with it. So obviously started trying to do that since I needed something. I was in the top 100 elite racers, women racers of 2013. Um, achieved that. And then that's kind of where I trickled into finding bodybuilding and lifting and all of that stuff. So um, it it was it was just very like you said, it's like you have this identity crisis, like what do I do with myself? Because I was just always used to being super, super active. I always had a game, or I always had practice, or I always had this, or I always had that. And then at the same time, you're able to eat a lot of stuff because you're burning so many calories that you're just like, I want to go eat ice cream and it's fine. Well, when you're not burning all those calories, you're like, well, that ice cream's not going anywhere. So I had to go through all of that, because again, like my family, I come from a very like unhealthy obese family, and I was internally like, oh my god, like I can't get fat, right? Like I was always that person that was just so scared like that I was going to end up being fat. And sadly I've always had psychologically that internal just issue, because I didn't want to end up that way. And whenever I stopped playing sports, I was like, you got to figure it out. Like you got to find something to make yourself not fall into this, because it's very easy, whenever you're going to social events and doing all these things, and any social event that you go to now involves food, which sucks. But you just got to be careful of those types of things. So I was I was always very mentally stressed, that I was going to wind up um, just unhappy with myself and not liking who I saw in the mirror. And uh, really obstacle course racing saved me, and then bodybuilding finally gave me that sense of belonging, I guess you could say. It gave me what I was missing, to be chasing something, because I needed that. I was missing it, and I needed it after I stopped playing sports.
Okay, so two questions, and then we're going to start really diving into bodybuilding. What did you study in college? And then outside of kind of like that mental stress of not wanting to be fat, did you struggle with any other type of like body image issues? Because I know a lot of ladies do, especially when they're younger. If you don't mind talking about that for a quick minute.
Yeah, so my college routes was kind of confusing. So I actually started off in biomedical science because I was going to be a pharmacist, and I hated chemistry. So then I changed my degree to kinesiology, and from kinesiology, I changed my degree to business, and so I actually have a master's degree in business management. Um, I Once I kind of got into, the working field and everything, I was like, well, I'm going to be, I want to be a leader. And it just made sense to get the business side of things, because I was like, I can run a business, I can be in charge of businesses, um, just be that executive type position. So that's what I ended up finishing with, from there. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second question that you asked me?
Outside of just the kind of the mental distress of not wanting to be fat, was there any other body image issues
Oh,
that you
right,
struggled
right.
with?
Uh, I think, not necessarily whenever I was younger, um, but more so when I got older. Yes. So I don't necessarily remember, other than just I've always hated my thighs, I guess I can say. Just always hated my thighs. They're just stubborn. They like to hold fat. But really, I think the body image issues came later, whenever I actually did start bodybuilding. Because for females, the number one place that you lose body fat is immediately in your chest, because that's all breast tissue really is, it's just fat. And so those types of feelings came later, whenever, you're flat chested and not feeling very feminine. So
Okay. Okay, now so we go from the obstacle course racing, and then you meet this like taekwondo type guy, and he kind of starts training you. Let's speed it up just a little bit. Why don't you fast forward to like when you first decided you were going to do a bodybuilding competition? Was it bikini? Was it a figure? Was it women's physique? Like, just walk us through that first competition. What did you compete in? And then just unpack kind of like your competition history, Candace. Okay.
yeah, it was always women's physique. Always wanted to do women's physique. I had unstable ankles from basketball. And I had, with ligament issues and things like that. So I was always very nervous of walking in heels on stage. I didn't want to embarrass myself. And so that's where training to actually put on muscle before actually doing my first competition came into play, because I actually wanted to be competitive and make sure I had muscle, to fit the profile, right? So first competition was in women's physique, and I kept doing women's physique until in 2020. Well, in 2019, I got pregnant with my son, and had him in 2020. And then the bodybuilding scene had just kind of changed a little bit throughout the years, right? Like, a lot of bodybuilders were dropping down to women's physique because bodybuilding just got very intense. And even for a little bit there, bodybuilding did kind of disappeared because it got so intense, right? But because of that reason, a lot of the bodybuilders came to women's physique and made women's physique bigger. And so, and then now, striated glutes used to not be so prominent. Now you have to have striated glutes. I mean, it's intense. Like, women's physique is way more intense now than it was. And so I actually dabbled a little bit in figure because I was like, well, maybe I'm not big enough now for women's physique. Let me see what figure looks like. And then I even dabbled a little bit in bodybuilding. But bodybuilding, not big enough. That was my critique, which rightfully so. I'm 5'9", so I knew I wasn't big enough, right? And figure, when I did figure, just I don't think my waist was small enough. And I don't think my legs were conditioned enough whenever I attempted figure. And so and truthfully, I feel much more at home whenever I do women's physique. I feel much more in place. I do feel like women's physique is my category. I always have felt that way, but I did dabble in figure and bodybuilding just to see. I wanted to see what it felt like. I wanted to see how I compared. But ultimately doing nationals in Orlando, um, even the commenters, they were just like, this is where she belongs. And I was like, it is where I belong, right? Like I agree. I you can tell just my presence on stage. It's very fluid and very confident because that's how I feel. Because I know it, right? Like I've been doing that since my very first competition. That's where I started. That's what I know. So I do feel very comfortable and confident there. Um, I did, I think I did 2016 I competed, 2017 I competed, 2018 I was going to compete and I actually pulled out of the show because I thought I didn't look good enough. Of course, looking back at the photos, I looked fine. um, and then 2019 I got pregnant with my son. Um, 2021 I came back and competed, qualified for nationals. Then 2022 I did 3 shows this year, which I've never done 3 shows in 1 year before. So it's been a lot, but I'm really, really glad I stuck with it. I'm so glad I didn't quit. Because I had a lot of people tell me, they're like, hey, you need to take a break and just come back at it next year. And I was like, no, I'm right there. I was like, I'm right there. I just need to get it right. And I was like, if I can just get it right, I will be there. And so I had several people that I had to say, no, I don't agree with you. I'm gonna keep going. And obviously it paid off to
Yeah.
do so. So
Okay, so when did your current coach Andrew Vu come into the picture? When did you connect with him, and how has he been as a coach for you up to this point?
so I went to him 12 weeks out from Orlando and told him, I was like, hey, he had actually been working with someone that goes to my gym, and she looks phenomenal. She was just looking great, and I was seeing her transformation, and I was like, man, like um it's always been my legs. My legs were never conditioned enough in my previous shows, and I was like, I don't ever feel like I had a successful peak week, and I was like, I just need a successful peak to get to really like see what happens. And so 12 weeks out from Orlando, I went to him. I was like, hey, will you work with me? He's like, absolutely. We got to get going. And so I just told him my plan. I was like, hey, this is my plan. I want to do the Texas Cup in November as a practice show because I don't feel like, well, truthfully, it was because a lot of people I had seen go to nationals, they had always done practice shows. It's like they'd always done a local show, and then 2 or 3 weeks later they go and win. And I think it's because your body's like right there, and if you can just make your body even better leading up to that national show, then you get there. So I told him, this is what I want to do, this is my plan. And he was like, okay, let's do it. And so he was really great. He's very direct and to the point, which I have that personality as well. So I kind of, the first time that he was just kind of like, you know, without directly saying this, but this is what he meant, like, your excuses don't mean anything. Like, get your shit together. Um, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, um, he means business. So here we go, and I was able to, I feel like I was able to take his directness just because I'm kind of direct. And so, getting that type of feedback, I was like, okay, like I get it. It's fine. Like we, he just wants me to be, be intense. And because some of his feedback to me was, you're just going through the motions, you're not training hard enough. And, honestly, I had to kind of take a look at myself, and I was like, you know what? I think I am just going through the motions. Like, I think you're right. Because you're not training heavy enough. If you were, you'd be getting harder. If you were, your look would be getting, would be coming in, like you would be looking different. And so he just kind of had like a real conversation, like, you're not training hard enough. And he had me film myself every workout that I did for a week. And that was his feedback. He was just like, you need to be more intense. You need to lift heavier and you need to be more intense. And I was like, you're right. Because, I had done that before, but I think sometimes you just start going through the motions and you start to forget that you still have to act like that last set, you go to failure, or, that last set, you couldn't have lifted any more, or you couldn't have lifted any heavier, or you took it to where you took it to that next level, right? Like I wasn't doing that. And I was just like, I you're right, it's like I need to get it together. And it's hard because you're on low carbs, you're on low calories, you don't have energy. When you train that way and you're not eating a lot and you're doing a lot of cardio, um, the rest of your day you have nothing to give, and I have a 2-year-old, and I'm in management, and I have employees I have to deal with, and I have clients that I have to show up for, and I have to sit there and kind of fake it sometimes because I don't have anything left to give after I gave it all there. I gave it all to my workout, and then you're just like, crap, like I'm drained for the rest of the day. Like, let me go fake this for for the whole rest of however long. So, but he was really great, and I respect him so much, and I have never looked how he brought me in for that show. My legs have never been that conditioned, and that was the answer. I knew that was the answer. I knew if I could just find someone to get me past that roadblock, that I would be getting somewhere, and he did. So
Excellent. Okay, now before we kind of put a cap on nationals talk, I want to again take a couple steps back because I don't want to forget about discussing a couple things that you've mentioned. First of all, I want you to talk about when you had your son back in 2020, which that was had to have been a wild time to have your first child, right? But
yeah, that was awesome.
obviously you're a lady, and there's going to be a lot of ladies that are going to watch and listen to this. And so I try to always, whether it's a male or a female on the podcast, I want to try to draw things out that's going to be relatable, and people can kind of glean from the guests, right? So talk about, obviously, I'm sure having your son changed you, but how did it kind of change you in terms of maybe your mindset or perspective as an athlete, and more specifically as a bodybuilder?
Uh, so in 2020, obviously COVID was the big topic of discussion, right? And it was actually so in March of 2020. So I had my son in August of 2020. So in March of 2020, COVID, kind of was all the rage, just kind of starting the ramp up. And then I got laid off in June of 2020. And then I had my son in August of 2020. So there was a lot happening, right? Everything was shut down. I was trying to do like at home workouts and all this stuff. And I was going through a lot of, you know, obviously mental thoughts of like, what am I going to do? I have to find a job. I have to have a kid, all of these things. So there was a lot happening. And I never planned on, no longer competing. So it was really frustrating because I actually there was some people who would talk to me or introduce me, and there was one person in particular I remember. They were like, "Oh yeah, this is Candace. Like she used to compete," and I was like, "What do you mean I used to compete?" I was just like, "Man, is this how women feel like whenever to have kids or like take a step back? It's just like I'm no longer an athlete because I decided to have a baby. Like that's awful." And it was an awful feeling. I was like, I plan on coming back. I was like, I'm still an athlete and I still plan on competing. So um that was kind of a eye opener to me. I was like, I bet other people feel this way too. And then I did have a C-section um with my son. So um learning how to navigate through that, it's really sad because I actually had a female doctor, and it's just so sad how they don't guide you through a lot of the stuff, right? Like um I asked her, I was like, "Hey, I still plan on competing after this, and am I gonna have to worry about the scar and like my stomach's not gonna hang over the scar, right? Like you don't know anything, like my abs, you're gonna cut through them. I'm gonna be able to heal these things, right?" Like I'm asking these questions, and she's like, "Well, um, you know, it's different for everyone. Um, but sometimes you may just still have a little extra skin there." It's like very unencouraging, right? Very just, oh great. Like my body is just gonna be mutilated and just deal with it, right? Okay, awesome. So I had to do a whole bunch of research on my own, like how do I um get my core back, because for a long time I had no feeling there, so it was very awkward, right? Like you don't have feeling, you're wondering when it's going to come back, it just all feels kind of numb. It's like I think I'm engaging my core but I'm not really sure, type of thing. So I did reformer Pilates for a little bit. I could notice a big difference after that because I could actually tell that I had engaged it because I was very sore afterwards. So I was like, okay, like we're good, it's still there, right? And then I looked into scar manipulation, which is actually a real thing. I think it's actually called something specific. I can't recall what it's actually called, but you actually have to specifically do certain things in order to break up all the scar tissue with the scar to make sure that the scar doesn't harden and get all of that stuff behind it, whatever the tissue and whatever all of that is, just work all of that stuff out, and it hurts a lot. It's not very comfortable to do that, but I'm glad that I did, because you work through it. And so I researched all of that, and just now just learning patience, was never a very big patient individual. So I've learned a lot of patience having a toddler, and then just having a baby in general. Didn't sleep for the first like 9 months, so that was exciting. Um, and I started working with um, a coach right after I had my son, because that was my big plan. I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna jump right back in, and I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna beat this postpartum body and get back to competing, and it's gonna be great. And it took a lot longer than I thought it would. I felt like I had a lot of inflammation that my body was just holding on to. And the coach that I kind of started working with, they're like, all right, like you're gonna do 60 minutes of cardio, on the Stairmaster, level 10. And I was like, no, like I'm not, like I can't. I was like, I'm not to that level. And then you have to find the time, right? Like I had to navigate the time. Um, I have a baby. So like then you have to think, okay, like I can't just go to the gym anymore, right? Like now I have this person I'm responsible for. I have to figure out where he goes while I go to the gym. And you have to navigate through all of those things. And a lot of how I became successful, like I'd start waking up, at 4 a.m. And then sometimes I wouldn't, I'd finish cardio when he went to bed. And so I wouldn't go to bed till like 11 p.m. And then I have to wake up and do it all over again. And it was what it was. Like you had to figure out how to navigate being responsible for somebody and still find the time to get in your goals. And eventually, finally, it's like my body started responding. But I got really discouraged, to be honest, like after I had him and kind of really tried to jump in, because it took a little bit longer than I thought it would. And you always see these on social media, you know, just like these people just like, oh, postpartum body, like 4 months postpartum, like I just look phenom. And you're like, oh my God, like I suck because I'm not there. You know, like what's wrong with me? And I'm a fitness, you know, person. Like I've been a personal trainer for a long time, and so I'm just thinking to myself, like, why am I failing? You know, like what's wrong with me? So I had to work through all of that, but eventually, you know, just the consistency behind it and just staying with it, my body did start responding and finally started getting to where I was trying to go. So
Okay, cool. Okay, now the other question I want to just ask you, or a topic I want to touch on, then we're going to wrap up with nationals. So, and again, I'm asking this and trying to draw this out of you because it's relatable to a lot of people that are going to be watching and listening. So you mentioned like, you know, you really started having more body image issues past kind of the fat thing once you started competing, right?
right.
Now, was did this start kind of like because the judges were critiquing you and the feedback they gave you? And specifically, I'm referring to like being flat chested, because obviously we know we start getting into competing and stuff. There's a certain look, right? And either you
Right.
have that look or you don't. And if you go the enhanced route, there's different things that you can do to get that look, so to speak. So my question is, was the body image issue kind of struggles, was that more because of the judges' feedback and then that kind of got implanted in your mind? Or was it when you started competing and then you start looking at the other girls, the other competitors, you're like, man, like my chest doesn't look like that, or what have you? Can you kind of expound on that, Candace, please?
Yeah, so I like I said, I when I started competing, you know, I made that goal of like, look, I want to go pro, I want to go to Olympia. And I don't know how much it ties in now, because like I said, like I do feel like there's been some change within the industry a little bit. But back then when I started, it was like your suit color mattered, right? Like, did you have boobs or did you not have boobs? Like that mattered. Like, did you look feminine or did you not look feminine? What was your hair color? How did you have your hair? What was your did your makeup like what was your jewelry like? And even like I go back to, you know, I used to love watching Generation Iron because it was just such like a motivator, right? Like you watched it and you were just like, yes, I'm gonna go kill it. But even in Generation Iron, they mention like sometimes it comes down to, you know, well, I like their eye color better, or, you know, this and that. And they even say that in general, like you look at these people and you're at this very, very high level and just everyone looks phenomenal. And so how do you break it down? How do you start to break it down? Like, you know, well, you know, their suit looked better or their tan was better or whatever, right? Like you start to have to nitpick. And so for me, being the person that was like, hey, look, I'm all in. I'm trying to take this somewhere. I'm trying to do something with it. Um, and I started to feel like I had lost my feminine side, right? Like, cause I'm sitting there benching, you know, 200 something pounds and I have pecs, right? Like and then you're like, okay, well, now you put a suit on, you're flat chested. Um, you start to feel like something's missing. And then you start to think, okay, like I want to have this feminine presence. I still want to be very feminine, but it's very hard to do that as a woman whenever you're missing feminine features, whenever you lose your curves, right? Like you lose the feminine side to what makes you a woman. And so for me, I never got any specific feedback. But I just personally felt that way. Because the smaller, you know, the more muscular I got and the smaller I got, the more flat chested I got. I even went when I went to go get um start talking to plastic surgeons. They even I had a plastic surgeon tell me, he was like, your pec muscle is too thick. He was like, because he's like, I can't give you the size that you want behind the muscle because your pec muscle is too thick. there's no way for me to be successfully do this. You're going to have to work up to the size that you want. And so eventually I actually talked to a plastic surgeon that actually wanted to do it above the muscle and gave me the reasons why. And so I ended up going with him. But you know, you have to navigate through all those things as well. Obviously the chest is a muscle, and so you train it, and then you have to go and deal with comments like that. Well, your pec muscle's too thick. So here we are in this other issue that we have to work through. So it was really more so me and just knowing the industry and knowing what I wanted to bring to the industry. And I have no regrets whatsoever with my and why I did it. Because even like the, you know, I know I'm bringing up nationals again, but even the that I got at nationals was that I had a very feminine presence, and just the look that I had on stage, it was an appealing look, because I still had all those things, right? Like I got a lot of comments about my hair and and my makeup, and just the fact that I had that look. Like I brought that look that I wanted to bring, that had all of those things from back when I first started that mattered, right? And that's why I say, like, I don't know how much necessarily it matters now, but it matters to me because when I started bodybuilding, all of those things mattered. Like it mattered, and I'm not saying, you know, necessarily it matters that you have boobs, but like it matters that you look like a woman, right? Like it just matters that you have a feminine presence about you. And that's what I want to bring um to the stage. So
Yeah, excellent. All right, okay, let's finish up with a little nationals talk. So I think we're about what are we, about 2 weeks post nationals now?
yes.
Okay, so so why don't you talk a little bit about when did you get into Orlando? Walk us through peak week, walk us through pre-judging, and then if you remember to stop after pre-judging. If you keep going,
Okay.
that's okay, but whatever.
So we actually drove. It was really important to me. I felt really good about it. Like I said, this was like the best that I've ever looked, and it was really important to me that my son be there. You know, he's not going to remember, but I remember that he experienced one of the best moments of my life with me. And so my parents went, and my two stepdaughters went, and my husband and my son, and so it was just the whole family went, and we drove down there together. And we really wanted to make it fun and exciting, so we made it kind of like a little family vacation. So we drove um, straight to Orlando, which is a 17-hour drive from Texas. And I really couldn't drive because I was just very tired and low calories and water depleting, and just like this, you know, it's probably not safe for me to be behind a wheel. And so my husband's a trooper because he drove majority of the way, and then my mom helped as well. My dad actually just had shoulder surgery. So he was like 2 weeks post shoulder surgery, so he wasn't really capable of driving. So it was a process to do this. But we left Wednesday and got there early Thursday morning. And then Thursday, kept sending pictures to my coach. Luckily, our hotel let us check in early, thank God. Because we were like, what do we do for all these hours that we can't check into this hotel? So they luckily let us check in early. And I was just basically, you know, you have to start the tan process and get all of that going. And I actually, I've been for all the shows this year. We did self tan, so I did pro tan, but my husband applied it to me instead of doing the spray tan, because I was able to make myself as dark as I wanted to be. And so we kind of like that a little bit more, doing it that way. You don't have to go keep getting like asking for them to spray you more. You can just keep applying coats, you know. So had to start the tan process. Had to go meet Andrew at his hotel so that he could like see me and go through the poses with him and stuff. And then had to go do check-ins. Um, had to go meet with Andrew again. And so it was a busy, busy day. And that ended with me being able to eat a burger and fries. So it was all worth it in the end, because it ended on a high note. But yeah, it was just nonstop from driving in to Orlando. I think we got there like 7 or 8 a.m. And there was a little time change as well. So I think we gained an hour. But then from that moment on, it was just nonstop, right? Like tanning, checking in, eating, going to Andrew, checking in, doing this, doing that. It was busy day. I think I finally went to bed at like 11:30. Then I had to wake up at 4 a.m. because I had a 5 a.m. makeup appointment. So it was just it's nonstop and it's a lot. But it went well.
So then Friday, I know because I've had a lot of the dudes on from nationals, post nationals. So I know you ladies went Friday, and then the dudes went Saturday. So walk us through pre-judging. How did that go for you personally? And then what were your thoughts kind of once you got off stage? What did you do in between pre-judging and the night show? And then walk us through the night show.
Went really well. I so that morning, I felt really good. Went backstage. I think honestly, like I could look at myself and be like, this is the best I've ever looked. This is the look that I've always wanted. But then backstage and you're like, do I look good enough? Like, do other people think I look okay? Like, you still kind of second guess yourself, like, I look good, right? Because I mean, you have so many bodies back there that you're just like, oh, you look great and you look great. And it's like, do I look great? But like, I just told myself I looked great, but then you're like, do I look great? So I was backstage, and um it's just it's so overwhelming. Like, there's so many people back there. They're calling you to get glazed, and then you have to make sure that your suit's gonna stay put, and then you're pumping up. And a lot of times it feels like you're pumping up forever, and you're just like, am I doing too much or am I not doing enough? But you're pumping up forever. And so it's weird. And the way that they did it too, it's kind of odd because you're pumping up, but they wouldn't let you take your stuff to the lineup. But a lot of times you were up in the lineup for a while. So then you're like, well, crap, I probably lost the pump that I just stood there forever second guessing of whether or not I did it long enough. So that was, just that. But I was in the last class in bodybuilding and in women's physique. So that kind of sucks because I have to wait for every class to go before I finally get on stage. But first call outs in heavyweights in bodybuilding, I was really happy about that. I mean, there was some really phenomenal looking women that showed up, and there was so many. It was insane. I've never had that many people in my class before. I was just like, wow, like all the tall people showed up for the show. So the heavyweights, I think there was 10 of us, got first call outs, felt really good about that. And then in women's physique, there were 9 of us, and I was in class D. My son just walked in. And then so and I didn't really care too much about bodybuilding. It was just to do it, right? Like I wanted to win women's physique. That was my goal. Had I had won bodybuilding and not won women's physique, I probably would have been a little like, ugh, like that, what happens, so I was happy with first call outs in bodybuilding. I was like, cool. And then women's physique, my number was always called first, and it was such a good feeling. They never didn't call my number first in women's physique. I was number 7, I was number 17, I think. And just they kept calling my number first, like, and when they called my number first and they didn't move me out of the center, I came off stage and I literally went and almost tackled my husband, and he was like, breathe, just breathe. And I think I was hyperventilating. Honestly, I might have been when I came off stage, and I just like ran. And as soon as I came out of the curtains, he was standing there, and I just almost tackled him, and he was like, breathe, just breathe, just breathe. And I was just like, oh my God, like I was just so like, I think we did it. Like I was like, I think I did it, you know, like obviously I wasn't trying to tell myself that I had won, but I was like, holy crap, like I think I might have just done this, you know, like it was insane. And I was just very, very relieved, like finally, um, like it might happen, you know. I was like, this is the best. So we were just like super excited with what we thought that that meant. And yeah, it was great. It was the best feeling. I can't even describe it. And I feel like I feel the anxiousness just talking about it, because I probably was hyperventilating a little bit, just just trying to catch my breath and just trying to process, like, holy crap, you know, I was called first and I was in the center, and like this might actually happen, right? Then you start to believe it. Then you start to actually tell yourself like, oh, I do look good. Like I was looking like everyone else, and I was, you know, I did belong. So
Okay, so did you just kind of hang out, chill? Did you eat some food in between prejudging and finals, and then walk us just quickly through finals? Because we've been going well over an hour, so I want to be respectful of your time. But just what did you do in between prejudging finals, and then walk us through kind of like that moment when you knew you were an IFBB pro, that you won your class.
So I always try and go lay down and take a nap. It never works. I'm always so exhausted and I really, really want to sleep, but I'm never successful. So I really tried. I don't think I fell asleep. But then I was actually able to go eat another burger and fries, which was surprising to me, because I actually think I went to finals looking better than I did in prejudging. Because when I sent the photos that I have to Andrew before finals, I was like, holy crap, like I think I look better than I did. And so that was just amazing. I was like, oh, how, like, and that's when I finally started to like believe it a little bit, you know, like, oh, like I think I look better than I did. Like this is good. This is really good. So um went to went to finals after that, and then um it really happened really fast. It didn't seem like there was a very long break in between. And then you go and um had to do bodybuilding first, right? I thought, I kind of thought I was in third, but I ended up getting fourth in bodybuilding, which is fine. um I was still pretty excited that I was in the top five with that. And then I had to do my routine twice, which is always really odd when I do bodybuilding, because it's the same exact routine. I just change it a little bit, and but it's more of a women's physique routine that I'm doing for bodybuilding. Um, so did my routine, and again, like backstage, my number was called first. You know, when I got on stage, my number just kept continuously coming up first. And it was funny because I was staring at the head judge, and she was always making eye contact with me, smiling. And I was like, oh, like that was the best feeling. Like whenever I was, because I've always been taught to look at the judges, and I've always looked at the judges. I don't even look into the audience. I'm always just looking at the judges. And she was just looking at me, just smiling, and she looked so happy. And I was like, oh, that was like the best feeling ever. Whenever I saw that, I was like, yes, this is a good sign. And so I just, oh man, I stood there on the side, and I remember closing my eyes as they were calling people. You know, they called out fifth, fourth, and third, and then it was me and another girl. And I closed my eyes and just I just said, please, like, please let this be the moment. Because I knew first and second got their pro card, right? But like I wanted to get first. Like I wanted to get first more than anything. And I was like, I just closed my eyes and I was like, please, please. And when they called her for second, you know, I got teary-eyed for a second, because, you know, you just, in that moment, everything was worth it, right? Like in that moment, it all just came off of you. Like it was just all worth it. And everything you had been working for this entire time just came to light and came true. And it was just the most amazing feeling to finally accomplish and to feel like you're good enough, right? Like to just feel like you belong and to feel like you're good enough and to feel like all your hard work this entire time and everything that you've been through and all of the workouts and the mental and the physical and just just everything, like it was all worth it. Like you made it. You made it. And I went up there and honestly I hadn't seen any of the other class winners. So it really didn't dawn on me as I was standing there. I was just so freaking ecstatic that I was holding a pro card, and um, so I walked back realizing like, oh yeah, you got to do the overall, and I hadn't even seen the other class winners, and so I had kind of walked back there, and I I felt really good about it, but again, I hadn't really gotten a good look at them, and really wanted that huge trophy, but ultimately I I went there because that would have been nice. I've never won an overall. It would have been nice to finally win one, but um I I went there to get my pro card and I did that, and getting first place out of 9 women, um I was just so overwhelmed, just felt so blessed, like just so thankful that you know I finally showed up the way that I had always intended, and it was the best. It was the best I'd ever looked, and it was the best physique on stage, and knowing that I finally accomplished that was just the best feeling ever. So
Awesome. So I have to ask, any thoughts in terms of a pro debut, or what's kind of next for you, Candace?
yeah, so we're playing on August 2024. Doing the Texas Pro, and really never had a strategic off season. I've never had like a well thought out and strategic off season. So I'm super excited to work with Andrew in 2023 and just really build upon the weaknesses that we kind of saw that I just need to improve on to really be competitive as a pro. And I think it's really important too. Like I see a lot of amateurs go pro and then they like jump in and you just don't compare. There's a huge difference between someone that's been competing as a pro for 5 years and me who just got my pro card. So, and it's okay to acknowledge that, like um they look phenomenal and their upper bodies are well established and I need to build up a little bit to that, and that's okay. I'm okay with admitting that, because I would much rather stand on a pro stage looking like a pro than stand on a pro stage looking like an amateur that just turned pro. So we're gonna really um do some heavy intense intentional lifting in 2023, and hopefully 2024 I can look like I belong next to those women. So
Cool. Exciting. But first of all, you get to enjoy Christmas, right? As a
right,
pro.
my yeah, my one holiday this year that I get to actually um participate in, which is
Well,
okay. It's
it's
okay.
gonna it's gonna be
um
awesome because you got that pro card, you got your family, so it'll be pretty enjoyable, I'm sure, right?
yeah, I'm excited.
All right, Candace. Sorry we went. You said
No, it's
about
okay.
60 minutes. We're way past
It
that, but we
probably
got
me.
we
I
got
talk
into
too
some
much.
good conversation. So I just want to say thank you so much for really opening up, kind of being transparent with us, getting into your life story, your bodybuilding story. Before I do a really quick outro and I let you go, if you have any final thoughts, any final words for us, please. I'm going to turn it over to you. Give us your Instagram, any shout outs, anything that you want to leave with us. The platform is yours.
So my Instagram is Candy1823. Um, and to anyone that may be trying to turn pro or maybe trying to accomplish something in bodybuilding, I would just say believe in yourself. Continue pressing. I think find the person that believes in you. Get someone that believes in you, because not having my husband, who is also my best friend, I mean, would have been hard. He helped me a ton through the difficult times, and just being there, having somebody that's, you know, guiding you and supporting. It's so hard to do the sport by yourself. And anyone that does, I mean, holy crap, like, props to you, because you've got just some some intense character don't have. I mean, it's insane. It takes a village. But I will say, like, I went through a lot of coaches to get to this point, and I'm so glad that for whatever reason internally I turned to Andrew, and it paid off. And you know, just finding like the right coach, I think, is a really hard, really hard thing to accomplish. Just finding the person that works for you, because sometimes what works for someone doesn't work for someone else, right? Like, I think you just have to find that right person that really actually works for you. And so don't get discouraged if you haven't found that person yet, because you will. You will find them, and finding the right recipe does happen. It took me a little bit, but I'm a true believer that I always believed in what I wanted to look like, and I finally achieved it. And it is possible. You just have to keep trying. So
Awesome. All right, Candace, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. Quickly here, as we wrap up this great conversation today with Candace, if you guys have not done so already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube in regards to Behind the Muscle podcast. Then also, please take this episode with Candace, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Candace, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.